For a long, long time, the rules of business costing felt like they were set in stone. But what happens when those old rules just don't work anymore? Well, that's what we're diving into today. How modern business is completely tearing up the old playbook and rethinking what standard cost even means.
So let me start with a question that might sound a little out there. What if everything you've ever been taught about being efficient, keeping every single person and every machine busy 100% of the time, was actually losing you money? It's a wild thought, right? But it's at the absolute heart of a massive shift happening in management accounting. So let's kind of frame this whole debate. In one corner, you've got the classic old-school rules of costing. Think factory floors from the last century. And in the other corner, you have this new philosophy, one that's built for the crazy speed and complexity of the economy we live in today. And here is the fundamental conflict. Traditional variance analysis, it's obsessed with the little details, the efficiency of each individual part. Did that machine run all day? Did that one worker hit their target? But throughput accounting, it asks a much, much smarter question. How much profit is the entire system making? It zeroes in on the flow through the bottleneck, that one single point that's holding everything else back.
Okay, check this out, because this story perfectly illustrates the problem. Picture this, you're a manager. You see a machine just churning out parts that nobody needs right now. It's just creating this giant pile of inventory that you have to pay to store. So you make the smart call, you shut the machine down. But guess what happens? The traditional accounting report comes back and it looks like you failed. You get hit with a negative labor efficiency variance because your people weren't busy. You literally did the right thing for the business's bottom line, but the system actually punished you for it.
And this just begs the question, doesn't it? Are we measuring activity just for the sake of it, or are we measuring actual progress toward our goal, which is making a profit? Because rewarding busyness can seriously lead you down the wrong path. So how are businesses adapting to this?
Now, this doesn't mean we're just tossing standard costing in the trash. Not at all. Instead, the really smart companies are adapting it, reshaping it for the modern world. The game has changed, so the rules have to change too.
And this is not just some abstract theory. We're seeing some real innovation, as these ideas move way beyond the old factory floor. So let's take a look at how they're being used in some of the sectors that are really shaping our world, starting with high-tech.
So think about a high-tech company. In a factory that's super automated, direct labor isn't really a variable cost anymore. You've got these highly skilled engineers and operators. You're not just going to lay them off if you have a slow week. They become a fixed, committed cost. So the whole focus of variance analysis has to shift. You stop obsessing over labor efficiency and you start tracking the things that actually move the needle, your materials, and the energy it takes to run those sophisticated machines.
And it's not just for-profit companies either. The public sector uses these exact same ideas for cost control, which, as you can imagine, is absolutely critical for accountability. Take a service like street cleaning. What they'll do is compare the actual monthly cost per unit, say per street cleaned, to what they budgeted. This creates transparency, and it makes sure that taxpayer money is being used effectively. And they make smart adjustments for things that can throw the numbers off, like accruals or seasonal changes.
Okay, but what about the service industry? This is where it gets really, really interesting. I mean, how on earth do you create a standard cost for something as personal and variable as a haircut or a dental exam?
Well, the answer lies in a really powerful concept called McDonaldization. And before you say anything, don't just think about burgers. Think about the process. It's a method of taking a really complex task and breaking it down into its smallest, most efficient, and repeatable parts. And if you can do that, you can create reliable standards for pretty much any service out there.
And the process is super methodical. First, you break the entire service down into the smallest possible tasks you can think of. Then, you figure out the single most efficient way to do each one of those little tasks. The third step is the key. You standardize that one best method so everybody does it the exact same way every time. And it's only then that you can accurately measure performance against a really clear, established benchmark.
And suddenly, this makes standard costing possible for a huge range of services. Let's go back to the dental checkup. It can be broken down, right? You've got patient greeting, maybe that's 1 minute. Initial x-rays, 3 minutes, 2 plates. Hygienist cleaning, 15 minutes, using a standard set of tools. Dentist examination, 5 minutes. By standardizing every one of those steps, a dental practice can predict its costs, schedule patients way more efficiently, and make sure every patient gets the same consistent quality of care.
Okay, so now that we've seen how services can be standardized, let's dig into a more technical twist that has some pretty huge implications.
how you decide to account for your fixed costs, things like rent and salaries, that can completely change your financial picture. And this brings us to what's called the marginal costing approach.
This table really shows the fundamental difference. Look at the top row. With traditional absorption costing, you take a fixed cost like rent, and you absorb a little piece of it into every single product you make. But with marginal costing, you don't do that. You keep your fixed costs totally separate. This means the product cost under a marginal system is only your variable costs, the direct materials, the direct labor. And the huge advantage is in that last row. With marginal costing, you completely get rid of the complex and often misleading volume variance, which is this weird thing that tries to penalize you for not producing enough to absorb all your fixed costs.
So here's the bottom line. When you use marginal costing, you stop stressing about whether you produced enough volume to cover your fixed overhead. The only question that matters for your fixed costs becomes super simple. Did we spend more or did we spend less than we budgeted? That's it. It's just a much cleaner, more direct way to manage your spending.
And that really brings us full circle, back to our central idea. All of these adaptations, all these new philosophies, they're all driving towards one single powerful point. The goal was never just to be efficient, it's to be effectively profitable. It's about making smart decisions that help the entire system win.
So I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. Whether it's in your business, in your studies, or even in your personal projects, which established standard or measure of efficiency that you follow every day might actually be holding you back from achieving what you really want?